Hi and welcome everyone to the Copilot for M365 webinar. Thank you for making the time today to find out more about Copilot and how it might be able to work in your business. As you can see today, we've got a bit of an agenda below. Intro to AI, so getting a better idea what it's going to look like, how Copilot might look in your business, some of the questions to get ready for, because adoption is going to be a huge part of the success of Copilot. And naturally pricing, what's that going to look like in terms of commitment to your business? So welcome to the age of Copilot, as Microsoft would say, but you're probably picking up it's more just the age of AI in general, with ChatGPT and other forms of AI starting to come into your businesses, or when you're talking to friends and family, you're hearing how they're starting to adopt it. So what are people sort of saying about Copilot right now? Because it really launched last year, and it was only January that it became available to that medium and small market. So Copilot is transforming businesses, and where that's coming from is we're looking at what problems businesses are facing. So there's a lack of innovation. They're calling it digital debt. So as you might know, when COVID happened, previously we were in the office meeting, not many people were using Teams or Zoom, and we didn't have as much noise, I guess, coming in on a daily basis, but that's really changed. And with that's brought new challenges to business. And that's something Copilot's trying to help. Like, how do we reduce that digital debt? How do we make ourselves more effective in the workplace? So 68% are already saying Copilot's improved their quality of work. It's made them more productive. And those that have got it have not wanted to give it up. Interestingly, when chatting with businesses, we've found also that those with neurodiverse team are getting a really big benefit from Copilot. So instead of sitting down and wondering how to start their day, they're finding it a lot easier with Copilot, sort of giving that initial push and then getting into their work. So how does it work? You might be already using a large language model if you're using ChatGPT. Then Microsoft uses the graph. Now, what the graph is essentially all your data that is sitting in your Microsoft 365 environment. So if you currently have that everywhere, you probably won't be able to leverage the full benefit of Microsoft's Copilot. And one of the things you might plan as part of your adoption is how do we then get all that information into the right place so we can leverage it as much as possible and really get the value. Copilot for Microsoft 365 essentially sits in all your Microsoft apps. So if you're running business premium or standard, then you will notice the Copilot logo appear in that and you'll start to leverage it. And unlike ChatGPT, which once you put your information in there, it's on the internet, Copilot doesn't do that, but it will draw information in from the internet. So if you have a website that I think might help with the query you've asked, or you might want to set up a connector because you have a CRM or another program that you want to draw data in from, you can use that. And here's a very large illustration of that sort of taking place. So the Microsoft graph, just think about that as all the information on your, not only your business, so that's your, your big SharePoint, but as an individual, what information you have. So that would be your Teams, your Outlook, your contacts. It uses that information. And then if you're using, like, let's say Word, for example, you ask a query in Word, it will then send to the large language model, grab the information from the graph, which is where your data is stored, put that together and be able to give you ideally the most accurate and correct answer possible. So how do you get started with Copilot for Microsoft 365? And it really starts with the security foundation. So that's where you want to start. And then we move into, well, how's it going to work in the business? And this is where you really want to start to think about use cases and what you think adoption would look like. And then the culture shift. So like anything in business, you might have bought tools previously or software and it didn't really go as planned. You really want to plan for how that's going to get adopted in your business, so the uptake and the benefit from that product is as great as possible. A little bit of a tidbit, we spoke to some businesses that were quite early adopters of Copilot, and these were big Microsoft houses, and they blasted it out to 100 users. They didn't do anything fancy, it was just an email blast. Here you go, here's a license, give it a whack. And even these very heavy Microsoft 365 users had about a 30% drop off in the first 4 months, just because there was nothing greater than an email sent. So really start to think about that as well. So first is setting that security foundation, and my recommendation would be get an AI policy in place for your business before you launch into Copilot. Just making sure that your team and your staff understand the implications of using it and how to use it responsibly. So you might already have your team currently, putting personally identifiable information into ChatGPT or your business's proprietary data. So an AI policy will, more holistically help with how AI is going to be viewed in your business, and is definitely feedback from early adopters. And when I asked them, what's that one thing you wish you did first? They were all saying get an AI policy in place. So here's some of the common questions that are coming from people when asking about Copilot. And what's important to know is you're probably not going to achieve a gold standard of security before launching into Copilot. But what I would recommend is starting to look at your Microsoft environment, what permissions you have set up, who can view what, and where the access levels are. This will just give you a greater understanding of the risk and might determine on who you give that first license to if you do go down the Copilot path.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is transforming work with the power of generative AI. It's built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to enterprise-grade security, compliance, privacy, identity, and responsible AI. Copilot automatically inherits your organization's Microsoft 365 security, compliance, and privacy policies, so you know your data is protected and always in your control. It all starts with your Microsoft 365 tenant. Data stored in your tenant is encrypted and only available to the users within that tenant. Your existing Microsoft 365 permissions and policies ensure that data won't leak between users and groups. And Copilot users only have access to data they've been granted permission to see in Microsoft 365, using the same technology customers have relied on for years. Your tenant sits inside the Microsoft 365 service boundary, where Microsoft's commitments to security, compliance, data location, and privacy are upheld. The Copilot large language models, or LLMs, that process your data sit within that same boundary, much like other Microsoft 365 services. Microsoft does not have eyes-on access, which means no one can view your data. Your data is not used to train the LLMs. And our EU customers can be confident that their data is processed within the EU data boundary. Microsoft 365 Copilot, enterprise-grade security and privacy for the era of generative AI.
So what's best practice and what should your environment look like before you launch into Copilot? So ideally, you'd be using Microsoft Premium or an E3 or an E5 license. This just allows you to really set permissions correctly, do sensitivity labels and tagging. So for example, you might have an HR section of your SharePoint, and you might not have made that, you might not have set the permissions right on that. That's something you're going to want to make sure is set correctly before you launch into Copilot. You also might want to do sensitivity labeling, which is where you sort of mark it as highly sensitive. So that way when someone on their first day is searching in there and they shouldn't have access, they can't easily pull up that file because they're not one of the staff that have access to highly confidential information. Now, what you can do currently with Copilot, if you are really concerned, because you might be going, I've been thinking for a long time, my SharePoint environment's probably not crash hot. You can actually launch Microsoft Copilot for 365 without it looking at SharePoint completely. So you can switch off sections of it. So you can say, don't look at this half entirely, which means you won't be able to see it either. But if you're just really concerned about your security settings, that might mean you could launch into Copilot now, and in the background, really start to prepare that environment so then you can leverage all the data in there to its full potential. And again, Microsoft, like in that video, is just saying it's your data. It is not used to train the OpenAI model, and it's protected. So it is very safe. But the concern coming out right now is that what will people search for? So again, if your access is, if you're currently oversharing, your team can really currently go find that information. It's not like they can't now. It's just not very easy to find. And they might be able to actually now find it inadvertently. So they might have just done an innocent search because they can see it. It's going to pull that data in, as opposed to, actively searching through documents and trying to find that information that might be on page 50. Copilot will be able to bring that to the front page, so to speak. Okay, so Copilot AI at work. So this is how Copilot is going to look in across your app suite. So your Word, your Outlook, your Teams, they've got it in OneNote, they've got it in Loop. If you're not already using it, I'd recommend that's a great new additional feature. And they're continuing to add more and more Copilot's usability into that suite of tools that is offered with Office Standard and Premium E3 and E5.
Introducing Microsoft 365 Copilot, your Copilot for work. Copilot combines the power of large language models with your data in the Microsoft Graph and the Microsoft 365 apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet.
Is coming to life in the products millions of people use and rely on every day. Let's see how Copilot can use your customer notes in OneNote as well as another internal document. Copilot quickly creates a first draft. You can turn your Word document into a PowerPoint presentation that you can hone and polish. Let's jump into Copilot in Excel. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. Triage your inbox, highlighting the most important emails to prioritize. You can draft a reply using data from an Excel file, and Copilot will generate a reply for you.
The real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. You can ask Copilot to summarize what's happened so far. You can see who said what points were made. You can follow a meeting and catch up to see what you missed, even if you can't attend.
I want to show you an entirely new standalone experience. Business Chat works across all your emails, files, meetings, chats, documents, calendar, and more to turn all your data into knowledge.
Now let's imagine you're working on your business strategy. You ask Copilot to pull up quarterly projections and identify related risks. Copilot gives you key data points and flags potential issues.
We're deeply committed to listening, learning, and adapting with speed to help create a brighter future of work for everyone with AI.
So again, today we're talking about Copilot for Microsoft 365, but there's actually quite a lot of Copilots. There's Copilot for sales, there's Copilot for service, and they're bringing out Copilot for finance. So Microsoft, I think, changed the name 10 times already. But their plan or their strategy going forward is Copilot followed by the use case it's for. So expect to see more come out as, you know, more and more companies jump into Copilot and they start to find out how businesses are truly using the product. So Microsoft Copilot empowers everyday end users, and yeah, it's true. Like everyone could get a benefit from Copilot. To what extent that benefit is will vary on what their role is and what they do within that role. So Copilot, what's really coming out quite quickly as it's more the ones getting the biggest benefit, I guess, are the content creators. So, and that's not just marketing. Think about your financial planner that might be taking 3 to 4 hours to generate a customer document. Using Copilot, they can now get that to get a really good first draft, or they can take from a previous one, get the client's information and get them to talk to each other. So it's a bit more detailed and how the company uses their language as well. So this is a day in the life of Copilot for Microsoft 365. And to be honest, this one is sort of taken from a sales Copilot. So it's very similar to how I use it myself currently. So there's Microsoft Chat, which is like Chat GPT. Now, this is the one you can also get for free anyway. But this is the one that I've used quite a lot myself, and I would recommend you guys, if you're already using Chat GPT, please go switch to Microsoft Chat or copilot.microsoft.com, or if you're using Bing or if you're using Edge or Bing, you can get Copilot in there for free, the chat version. Start using that because you can ground your data within your 365 environment. So you're not training the AI model in that one. So I'm mostly using it for chat, quite extensively in Teams for Teams meeting, bit of Outlook summarization as well, and Word. So, you know, recently I went to look at hiring someone. They sent through their resume. I was able to tell Copilot safely, because it was grounded there, hey, take this resume, act like a HR manager. What are some good questions I should ask this potential employee based on their resume? And I knew I could do that safely within that Microsoft 365 environment, so I wasn't sending out that person's data. And then it also meant that I had a really good first draft of some unique questions based on their resume that I could ask them. So again, we know when it comes to Word, think about writing HR policy. So not just that resume conversation, but if you've got to go write a HR policy, you can get you really started on that. Maybe writing your company's AI policy. Teams that do RFQs and tenders, you can take from a previous tender and use that as a reference point when you go ask Copilot to make you a new one. And that's the same with the RFQs as well. So Outlook, I haven't leveraged that as much because I don't use a CRM that actually does full integration with Outlook as much. So if your team is using Dynamics, if your team is using Salesforce, you'll probably get an additional kick out of Outlook and using the Copilot for Sales feature. So that's something I would heavily recommend. What I'm also hearing as well, when drafting emails, there's a sentiment feature. So when you're doing that back and forth communication with a customer or some of your internal team, you can sort of use that to, make sure that your email is written correctly. And also, you'll pick up on the nuances in your customer's tone. So it might just say, hey, they seem a bit disgruntled, for example. So, when it says, as per my last email, Copilot would probably give you a better indication of what they really meant when they use that word. So this is where I envision and where I've sort of seen the most broad adoption, again, driven by COVID really. So, pre-COVID, no one was really using Teams. Post-COVID, everyone sort of, during COVID, everyone flooded into Teams, and that really hasn't gone away. But now there's just a lot of information. You've got a lot of chats potentially going, a lot of channels. Copilot allows you to summarize that. Now, if you're not going to utilize that feature, a great one to utilize is the meeting recap. So if you're in and out of meetings all day and you want to be able to recap quite quickly, get a summary, who said what, sort of meeting notes essentially. So you're not writing it yourself. You can actually achieve that with Teams Premium, which is only about $10.50 per user per month. And you can do it on a 30-day free trial. So that would be my little, tidbit there, a little intro into how it works in Teams. So what you might do in that instance is, you might have a team of 10 in your office and 2 really need Copilot and 3 are really heavy Teams users that do a lot of meetings, but, they have a CRM that doesn't really speak to Copilot as easy, so they don't need it. Just go get them some Teams Premium licenses, because that might be ample without that additional spend. And again, this is just showing the difference between Copilot and Teams Premium. So it's that intelligent recap to quickly catch up on previous meetings and get that. As you can see, if you're going to leverage the full features of Copilot, you do get a lot more benefit. But then, it's that use case. What's that employee actually using it for? And that way, you're finding you're getting the most out of the license, really. So if you think about it, Copilot only came out for general availability for under 300 seats in January. It's not a very old product, and it's continuing to advance. So I would, if you're jumping in there now and it's missing a feature, it might be bringing it in really quickly, or it's getting implemented like in the current month. So I think when I got this document, 80% of it is now available, and the more feedback they're getting, it's going to start to ramp up in terms of features based on feedback by how the general public are using it. So this is Copilot Studio. I won't dive into it too much, but this is where you can create connectors to your existing data and, sort of make your own Microsoft Clippy for anyone that remembers that. And what this allows you to do is if you have a big repository of, like, let's say HR information about your business, you can use Copilot Studio to create your own your own Copilot. And then a new starter might go ask Copilot Studio, hey, where's the HR policy for maternity leave? And because Copilot Studio has been trained just on that information, it will pull that and give the relevant information to the employee. You can actually also point it at websites as well. So what are the users saying? 64% are saying they're spending less time on email, 71 on mundane tasks, 75 have that improved search feature that Copilot brings, and 85% are getting to that first draft faster, allowing them to be more productive. So what's the final step to really think about? It is that culture shift, that adoption part. And what I'd recommend, and it was really good feedback when we did speak to someone about how they've been adopting the licenses. These licenses, when you get them, you could, let's say you start with 2. You could give that to 2 people and then just reassign them as you start to build out use cases for why Copilot or AI in general might be more broadly adopted into your business. And what you can also do, and I'll show you in a little bit around how you got good visibility on uptake, is you can give someone that license, let them run it for a month, look at the report, find out how they used it and go, hey, do you still want to keep this license, or should we give it to someone else? Or is it actually just a training issue and you're not sure how to leverage it? So really making sure you're supporting the team that are trying to adopt this product. So not only do they get a benefit, but then the business benefits from them getting a lot of use out of it. So again, start small, share that license around. Who do I give the first Copilot seats to? I would say those that are most trusted, especially if your SharePoint isn't going to be ready for it. So those ones are safe to do so. If you're unsure, do that feature where you can switch off SharePoint if you want to dive straight into Copilot, and you're not sure who has too much permission, but it might be someone safe to give it to us in the C-suite or like an IT manager, for example, and start to build out, start to think about working groups, those that are excited about AI in general. That might be the best to start off with because that'll help you build out those use cases for adoption. And then how do you measure it? So Microsoft is starting to build out more and more ways to report on adoption, which I'll show you in a moment. And they've also starting to build out a really big repository of information and adoption kits. So that's something you can leverage, which we'll send out post. It's available on Microsoft's website if you want to go have a big search for it. So yeah, really concentrate on that readiness. Who you're going to give that license to? Make sure it's safe. That would be my recommendation. Like, don't just go give it to someone that might start to abuse that search right off the bat. Again, have that AI policy in place, so that way, if someone does do something they shouldn't, that you've been quite clear from the get-go on your expectations around it. Create that AI council or just that working group. So some of the businesses that we've been speaking to, they've set up a little small working group. They meet once a month. They discuss where their wins were. They share them, and they start to build that momentum in the business around it. And that builds out the community. Yep, champions. You want those early adopters to get on, those ones that are passionate about Gen AI or that really think it can make an impact to their business. And then, yeah, celebrate the success and when you start to get those wins around Copilot, because I see it as a really safe way, obviously making sure your SharePoint's set up correctly to get into AI and how it might work in your business. Like your team are probably most familiar with the Microsoft environment, Microsoft's data, that if it's your data, you're on this call, it's highly likely that that's all, nice and safe in an Australian data center. So it's just a really safe way to start off. So Copilot Lab is one of the recommendations from Microsoft, which is where you can go and do prompting practice, because prompts are really going to be one of the things that's so vital really in Copilot. That's the thing your team are going to get. How do they start to speak to the AI and leverage what it can do? Again, what we said before, you've got that free Copilot in Bing, in Edge, and you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. So those team that don't get a Copilot license or you don't want to launch into it yet, but you want to make sure your data's grounded, I'll start to do it that way. And the Edge one's actually quite good because if you open a PDF, you can use Copilot and Edge to analyze that PDF. So that's a quick win that I would recommend. And this is just the dashboard. So this is going to help you measure the success of the adoption of Copilot in your business and just see what the uptake of that license is. So, if you, for example, get those 10 licenses and you see that, you pick that core people that you think are going to be the right use case for it and 80% adopt, that should give you, a good idea of where it might end up sitting in your business. And it means you're not going to just over provision licenses because it is, it's an upfront in your commitment. Oh, and there it is there. So Microsoft Copilot is $45 a month per user, and it has to be purchased on an annual commitment. So unlike some of the Microsoft licensing where you can buy it month to month and then switch it off, that's not possible. If it was free, I would assume you probably would have downloaded it by now. But if it was free, a lot of people would have downloaded it into Microsoft environments that weren't prepared for it from a security feature. So try and use that price more as a pause for reflection to go, yeah, is it the right time to put Copilot into my environment? And if it is, because I want to start leveraging it, how do we do that as safe as possible? And my sort of view on it, or weight of whether you get value from it, is do you think it would save more than 2 hours a month of time for that employee? That should give you a good cost saving, at least relative to the license. And then, might have other benefits from there. And again, this is just breaking down the various types of Copilot that are available. So you've got the free Copilot. Again, it's got that data protection, so it's staying within your Microsoft environment. So definitely, if you do anything after this call, stop using ChatGPT for your business data. Start putting it into Copilot, the free one. Then you got Copilot for Microsoft 365, Copilot for sales, and Copilot for service. And I'm sure there'll be 3 more by the end of the month. And that's all. Thank you. I think we've just ticked on to 12:30, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask them before we close off. And forgot to announce at the beginning, there will be some prizes. I think the best way to do this is I'll look at who attended the entire event. One of you will get a Copilot license. Evan will cop the charge for that one. And we've got some good merch. I'll do some jumpers, a couple of beanies, and we've got some cool caps that just came in. So we'll make sure they get out to you. And look, thank you so much for taking the time to attend this today and, find out how Copilot can add value to your business. And we'll send out some information posts if you want to have a more deeper chat or, look at your SharePoint environment and those type of things. Oh, great. No questions. We'll leave it at that. And all the best for your lunch on a Friday. And hopefully not too much left of the day to go. Thank you.